Okay, I think we'll start. I think people will just kind of join as we're going along. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this panel discussion. My name's Lydia. I'm the gallery manager at ONCA. I'm a white female presenting person with short brown curly hair. Today I'm wearing a black top, a pink and black stripy shirt, and I've got gold hoop earrings. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them. So I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping before handing over to Jay, who will introduce the speakers and the event. This webinar is being recorded and it will be shared online via ONCA's website in the coming few weeks. If you do have any technical issues during this event, please message me using the chat facility along the bottom bar, and I'll try and help you. If you have questions for any of the panelists or Jay, please put them in the Q&A facility along the bottom bar, and they'll get read out at the end, and hopefully we'll have time for everybody's questions. Just a content warning before we start that the panelists will be speaking about death, violence and racism. So yeah, I just want to say thank you to Jay for organising this event and for the panelists for being here, and I'll hand over to you, Jay, now to introduce everyone and kind of explain the running order for today.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Lydia. So, hi, my name's Jay Ho. I'm a woman. I've got beige skin, long black hair, wearing a shirt dress with a feather pattern and in black, cream and pink. And I'm sat in my studio in Hastings. So it's fantastic to be here with this panel event. So yeah, this panel event is going to be about art and conflict, and this is part of my an event kind of in association with my show at ONCA Gallery called The Vanishing Act. And this show is all about sexual violence in conflict, and it kind of stems from my aunt's experience in World War II, because they grew up in Japanese occupied Malaysia and Singapore. I also have a day job as well as being an artist. So I work for the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, and I've been working on human rights issues for the past 3 years, including on accountability for war crimes, Preventing Sexual Violence Initiative, and freedom of religion and belief. And I use my art to kind of explore different angles to policy making. So I'm really excited to have this panel event on today, because it will be really fascinating to kind of bring art and policy together. So the kind of running of the panel is, as I'm hoping that we will kind of discuss for about 45 minutes, and then there'll be a bit of a Q&A at the end. So this panel, I find this is really exciting. I think that all the panel members come with lots of interesting and diverse backgrounds and experiences, but what kind of brings everyone together is a kind of connection with art. And I hope to explore these themes further in relation to trauma, mental health and healing. So now I'm just going to introduce the panel members. So first of all, we've got Majid Addin, and he's an award-winning Iranian filmmaker. He's from Iran and he studied art and animation. He was persecuted for his critical stance towards the political regime, so he sought asylum in the UK after quite an arduous journey through from Iran to Europe. He's made an amazing music video for Elton John's Rocket Man, which is based on a Syrian refugee's journey to the UK, and we'll be seeing a bit of that later. And then Dr. Errol Francis is an artist, former mental health campaigner, and currently the CEO of for Culture and. He was artist in residence at the Frantz Fanon Centre, and he did this really poignant and powerful project called Remembering All Saints. Errol has also been pretty vocal during the Black Lives Matter campaign in relation to the museum and heritage organisations who kind of spoke up to express their solidarity in the protest calls to end racial injustice. But Errol has kind of spoken up to call for more action for them to decolonise their relationship with the UK Black community. So I look forward to hearing a bit more about that from Errol. And then finally, we've got Hernando Caceres, originally from Colombia, and he used to work for Justice Rapid Response, who help countries deliver justice where it's needed. Hernando did a deployment for JRR in Mali for the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission, which was set up to find truth about the conflict in Mali. And he uses a victim-centered approach and got survivors to open up and talk about their collective scars. And I look forward to hearing more about this later. First of all, so I'd like to kind of focus on Majid, if that's all right. So Majid, can you please describe yourself for those who might be joining us who are visually impaired, please?
Hello everyone. Can you hear me or no?
Yes, yeah.
Hello everyone. Thank you very much, Jay, for this one. I'm from Iran and I'm an artist, animator and illustrator. Actually, 2016 I came to the UK in the middle of 2016, and that animation you mentioned, Rocketman, is it was belonging to my first year I came to the UK. I was lucky. I get my answer as a refugee status very fast, after 8 months after I came here. And it was I won a competition, and it was the result after that competition. It was this.
Thank you. Majid, I don't know about you, but there was a little bit of feedback on the line. So I'll just kind of summarize what you've said. But so you're from Iran, and you actually made the journey to Europe, and when you were in Calais, you got to know was there a theatre group? Was it the Good Chance Theatre Group? Is it?
Yes, that was a Good Chance Theatre. It was one like a charity. Yes, it was a Good Chance Theatre.
And did they encourage you to enter this competition?
Not in the jungle. Yes, I was 6 months. I lived in the jungle college, but I met them in the jungle college. I became familiar with this group. When I got my answer, because I was living in the other city. I got my answer. I came to London. I was looking just for a job, for any art job or anything. They told me, yes, you can come to join this competition. The Good Chance Theatre. They told me you can join to this competition, and they helped me to this competition.
So we'll now play an excerpt of this this music video. So Lydia, if you want to play that'd be fantastic.
And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh no, 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 I'm a rocket man, burning out his fuse out there at home. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh no, 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 I'm a rocket same kind.
Thank you. Thanks, Lydia. Yeah, I highly recommend everyone to watch it if they haven't. It's a beautiful music video. And Majida, what I really liked about that is that you compared the journey of an astronaut to the journey of a refugee. And speaking from my experience, I've never experienced either of those, but I can imagine that both are arduous, extremely challenging, and very lonely. And I think you kind of brought that out beautifully in the video. And I'm very conscious that you also made the journey as a refugee from Iran to the UK. So my first question is how do your experiences influence the making of this film?
Just something I learned about the art. If it was this I read somewhere, any not for the any artist, it should be a reference of the creation is based on of their own experience. Because of that, I tried to for that when they offered me to for example, do this music video. The first time in my life I hear this music. Before that, I never hear the Rocket Band, this music. Just I thought, how can I make a relation between this music and this feeling between my own experience? And I tried to. At that time, it was very accidentally. I didn't know exactly, but this music brought back me to that one of my memories, and it's happened. Is on the process is after that is very normal. Typically it's happened, and image and seconds, all of them came to my mind.
Wow, and I know that the main character in the film is a Syrian refugee.
Yes.
And obviously you're from Iran, so there are differences. But I just wondered how much of the main character is you.
All not just this one not for the Rockets Band, all of the creation, all of the painting, all the animation, all the now I'm working on a graphic novel having more than 20 different characters. All of these characters, I can say half of the 50% of that is myself, and 50% of that some people I saw and I had the experience with the communication with them in my life. I saw them because of that. In all the character created to all my stories, any of the artwork, I can say some part of that is myself, and some part of it that is not me. Because of that, I need to keep it. As an artist, I need to have this opportunity to keep a distance with this character and see this character from a bit far to this.
And you moved to the UK, and obviously you were making art in Iran. You studied art and animation.
Yes.
And now you're in the UK making art now. So could you tell me like how being in the UK has changed the way you've made art?
I wasn't I wasn't a professional artist in Iran. Just I studied art in the MA Fine Art and BA Fine Art and MA Animation in Iran. But after I graduated, I have, because of some problems, because I was a cartoonist, some problems I couldn't continue as a job, and some problems has happened for me. That I can say that this one is my first exactly very professional job in all of my life, not just the UK, also here. I was a bit very lucky. If I say yes, all of them, it was because of me. No, that's not the right. Is very selfish. This creation of the Rocket Band is, yes, I'm proud of that, because the main idea came from me. The main reason, but many people helped me. Good Chance Theatre helps me to join to this competition and give me advice about the story, and the billing production company also so much help. So many people behind this artwork, not just me.
Yeah. That's fantastic that you managed to get that support. A Good Chance sounds like an amazing organisation.
Yeah, that's a very good.
And I'm really interested in this because with my art and my kind of current show at the Onco, it's kind of I'm making art, but it's not of kind of things that I've personally experienced. It's actually you know, of my aunts, and I kind of acknowledge that I don't speak for my aunts through my work. And but with you've had that experience, as you know, you've made that journey to the UK, and you also raise the awareness of the refugee experience to your animations and your talks. Can you tell me how people have responded to this or to your work?
I think maybe one reason, because maybe after they finished this job, when I look, and now I'm looking to this artwork, the reason a different group of the people make a communication and a feeling with this artwork, maybe yes, one of them is one reason is because of the great music, the Elton John music, but for this kind of interpretation, this kind of artwork, because I didn't speak just about the refugee. I spoke about the something is the common between all the people. That's the loneliness. Because when people they watch this animation, I think, I don't know, maybe it's the drawing. Yes, about they can find the loneliness of the refugees in the new community, but they find it some experience they have before, and this communication, that's the loneliness of the human in the new society, because each person, maybe all the people, they don't have a experience of as a refugee, but every person have this experience of the loneliness. They can find it. Yes, I was alone. It's some community, one situation. I didn't know what I didn't know what could I do. And one refugee in this new society can be the same situation, like having this experience before I had.
Thank you.
Sorry, my English is very bad.
I think it's really good that you actually mention loneliness, because I think that's very appropriate now in the time of COVID. And I think actually you're right that you know, when you watch the Rocket Man video, you know, you see the man and he's missing his family, and that touches the heart. Like, you know, everyone has family and everyone misses them. So it's, you know. Yeah,
that's another part of that. Yes, you can find it. All the humans have this experience. If we miss some person and we can't join to or family or that person we love, or that's this experience of all the humans.
Thank you. Thank you, Majid. Your work is really inspirational, and I definitely urge viewers to check out your films.
Thank you so much.
So thank you. Moving on to Errol now. Errol, can you please describe yourself to the audience who might be visually impaired, please?
Okay, I'm an African Caribbean man, and I have no hair, a shaved head, and I'm wearing black.
Brilliant, thank you. So as I mentioned in the introduction, that you've been campaigning for mental health, and you were part of an independent public inquiry into the death of Afro-Caribbean patients at Broadmoor Hospital. I understand that's also notorious for Jimmy Savile as well. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Yeah, and you were also artist in residence at Frantz Fanon Centre, and your project was to do with commemorating the closure of All Saints Hospital, and so we're going to show some pictures from that
Yeah.
project, and it would be really helpful if you can just talk through some of the images as we play that Errol.
Okay. Okay.
So
Thank you, Jay. So just to contextualise this, this is a project, a participative project that was involving patients of the hospital, whom I'm not allowed to name, but the project involved me giving them cameras, and they photographed the hospital in the way that they experienced the hospital as it was closing, and they focused on sites in the hospital that they'd had some contact with, and images of the hospital that expressed their feelings about being patients there, often detained patients under the Mental Health Act. The hospital opened in 1850 and closed in the year 2000. And I was working for the Mental Health Trust at the time. So this is a selection of the images. Oh, I was wrong, 1849, it was 1 year out. This is the commemoration trust for the hospital, which, by the way, stood right next door to All Saints, to Winson Green Prison. And there was something about the experience of Black people, or, you know, the criminal justice system, which also had parallels with the mental health system, experiences of incarceration, human rights issues, issues about the use of medication and the use of force, of restraint within the hospital. So that's the commemoration plan. I thought that the patients photographed, it was quite ironic as well as being quite poignant. I mean, this was the chaplain's toilet, and you know, the lectern beside the toilet with the filing cabinet somehow expresses the kind of dislocated nature, the experience of being in a psychiatric hospital. The next one is also really evocative. This was in the activities hall of the hospital, and behind the stage was this amplifier that was just covered in all this dust. In fact, there was another shot of a cello that was nearby. The cello had been smashed to pieces, and the music that was beside the cello. So these very poignant images, which make it look as if the hospital has already been closed, but it wasn't closed. This was the extraordinary thing. And the Mental Health Trust was not very pleased about these images of the hospital. They didn't want this type of image to be published. The first exhibition of this show was at the Soho House Museum in Birmingham, and it was then shown subsequently twice afterwards, once at the Institute of Psychiatry in London, and another time at the Stephen Lawrence Gallery in London. So the next one is, again, was quite extraordinary. I remember the day when we took this, and one of the guys, there was a room that was dark, we couldn't see what was in it, and he said, what shall we do? So I said to him, put the camera in, fire the flash, and then when we get back the image, we'll see what was in there. And there was this quite extraordinary image, which became the kind of poster for the show. And it sort of communicates this sort of sinister aspect of how the patients felt about, you know, being incarcerated against their will or receiving medication. But actually, this was really quite an innocent thing. It looks like a kind of interrogation chamber, but in fact, the chair was in the basement of the hospital, and because the patients often were detained, they couldn't go out. This was a sun lamp, and people would go and sit under this sun lamp to try and get some ultraviolet light. And the hole in the wall looks as if you know, someone has blown a hole in it and it tried to escape. You know, so it really gives this sinister side to psychiatric treatment. So the next one, I mean, this again, I just found it so poignant. You know, this was just the fuse box. Well, I don't know if it's a fuse box. It's a kind of circuit board, a junction, electricity circuit. But it it gives you, again, it's a kind of metaphor. I think it makes you think of electroconvulsive therapy, but also an idea of the brain. I mean, some doctors often describe the brain as, you know, a series of circuits, and that mental illness is somehow, you know, a short circuit, or that the connections have somehow been lost. But it's a fascinating image there again of the experience of, or not only just the experience of mental illness, but perhaps the medical description of mental illness. And then the final image selection, this is the facade of the hospital, and it gives you something of the architectural nature of these type of institutions, of which there are not many now, and they were all based on the architecture far away from all the hustle and bustle of the city, and yet institutions was not of convalescence and oppression. Selection of about 30 images, and as I said, I didn't take any of these photographs. I just coordinated the project and allowed the patients to photograph the hospital in the way that they felt they wanted to. I mean, I have a personal interest in architecture, and I think that this is one of the most poignant explorations of the experience of a building and what the building represents. But
Thank you.
so I was all right. Sorry. Yeah. Do you want to?
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry,
Go on. Yeah.
I didn't want to interrupt, but
Yeah.
but I just thought
Yeah.
this project is so powerful, and the fact that you like brought the patients in to take the photographs was so important, because I know, you know, like speaking personally as an artist, you know, whose ego is sometimes get in the way, and you basically gave the power back to patients, which I thought was fantastic.
Yes.
But I wanted to say, just kind of talking about mental health, I mean, it's so important at this moment in time because of obviously COVID, and a lot of people are isolated, as you know, Majid's kind of work kind of highlights. And you know, every day we see bad news, and you know, the death toll from COVID is increasing, and not only that, we have the Black Lives Matter that happened over, you know, the summer, and you know, looking at my work, I'm looking at kind of physical violence in war zones, but you know, the death of George Floyd happened during peacetime, and I also wanted to touch upon kind of this kind of notion of structural violence, because you know, which is even more kind of ominous and sinister. And I think actually your project in on Remembering All Saints kind of highlights that, is, you know, that you know, that there are kind of systems in place where some people are incarcerated or treated slightly differently, and that kind of impacts on their well-being, the length of their life, their kind of ability to thrive. So I'd be really interested to hear more about this and your work on decolonising UK heritage.
Yeah, well, just to take the points you make from the beginning, conflict, aware of the fact that, I mean, they're both in parts of the world, and that I'm working in. Sorry, were you saying something there?
Yeah, I'm just saying that unfortunately your connection seems to be kind of like you're cutting in and out, I'm afraid. So.
Oh dear. Right. Okay. Well. Oh dear. I don't know if I can switch my phone. I can try and see if the connection on my phone is better. Shall I try that?
Yeah, do you want to try that? And
yeah. Okay. And hopefully now. I hope this is better. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Your video isn't moving, but
Oh, right. Okay. I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop the video and see if it helps. Okay. So to answer your question, what I was saying was the conflict zone. I'm aware of working in a context that is considered to be peacetime, yeah, and that what Black Lives Matter brought out was the kind of conflict that we have in countries like the United States, but also in the UK around issues like criminal justice. And with mental health, there are some strong similarities. I just wanted to flag up the case of Kevin Clark, who is a vulnerable African Caribbean man who was apprehended by UK police in exactly the same way as George Floyd, using handcuffs on his hands and legs. He also said he couldn't breathe, and he tragically died. The inquest was only last month into his death. So these conflicts, if you like, between the criminal justice system and people of colour, and also between the mental health system, which also uses similar types of force on occasion to the police, result in tragic situations which involve human rights. And so that's what the project was trying to address back in 2000. And it remains an ongoing issue in the UK. And I think that the Black Lives Matter campaign reminded us of that.
thank you. I might bring Hernando in to talk, but I'd be really eager to hear more about your decolonising UK heritage work, but perhaps in the kind of general discussion at the end. So I'll bring you back in, Errol, if that's okay, later.
Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you, Errol. That is your work is so powerful, and what you do is really important as well. So moving on to Hernando. So Hernando, please describe yourself.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Hernando. I'm a Colombian guy, 43. My skin is white, although I don't consider myself to be a white person. I consider myself as being a Latino, which is a completely different range of culture and ADN in my blood. 180, 25 kilos, and I'm wearing a blue shirt.
Thanks for that, Hernando. Fantastic. So, Hernando, you're a transitional justice expert, and you've got over 15 years' experience working with survivors and victims of atrocities, and you've worked in a number of countries such as Cambodia, Burundi, DRC, Mali, Central African Republic, and your home country, Colombia. And you currently work for the UN peacekeeping mission in Central African Republic at the moment, and you previously undertook a Justice Rapid Response deployment to Mali. For those in the audience who might not know what transitional justice is, could you just quickly kind of explain what it is, please?
Sure, thank you very much. First, a side note, whatever I say here, I'm doing it on my own behalf. I do not represent the United Nations or any other entity. If I am here, is as a practitioner, as a human being, as a Colombian. I don't represent anyone. Transitional justice. Transitional justice is the kind of tools that societies and nations use to deal with massive human rights violations, with the aftermath of those violations. Is the judicial and non-judicial approaches to deal with perpetrators, but also to deal with victims. The ordinary justice system focuses on the perpetrators, on the bad guys, and how we put them to prison. Transitional justice is just the opposite. It focuses on victims. It's a victim-centered approach in order to help societies to rebuild their social tissue, to repair victims, and most important, truth-seeking. The truth of the perpetrators, which is normally what would you get in a ordinary justice process, but most important, the truth of the victims who have been silenced for years and years, and now they have the right and the opportunity to tell the truth. All that combined is what makes transitional justice. There is a little bit of justice, truth, reparations, and guarantees of non-repetition. All that together is transitional justice.
Great, fantastic. And you're going to play a slideshow of your work. So please do share your screen. Great.
Thank you. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, first of all, I would like to thank you and thank you all the members of the panel, all the persons who are watching us, and thank you for putting all this together. I come here with more questions than answers, and if you bear with me, I will ask you to take a piece of paper and write those questions down because they may be helpful. I don't know. The first question that I would like to ask is, can art survive war? And actually, just the opposite as well. Can war survive art? Those are spicy questions. And what can you say about art when you have in front of you a 14, 13-year-old child who's carrying a Kalashnikov on his shoulder as if it was a toy? Can there be art? The second question that I have is, can art be expanded or redefined by war? And this question is projected on top of a picture of a refugee camp. Actually, it's not a refugee camp, it's an IDP, internal displaced person camp. People live there, 50,000 people can live there in huts that they just made with whatever plastic they may find on the streets. And this is a tragedy. And can we have art here? The next question that I will have is, who's defining what art is? Who is the art policeman? Who is the art? Who decides what art artistic is and what it is not? Is there a rule? Is there a standard? Is there a measurement tool? And can there be art that you cannot see, invisible? Can it be soundless or touchless or smellless or tasteless art? All together in one art. And tasteless, I know that in English it could mean something different. What I mean by here is all your senses. Can there be art that your senses cannot conceive, right? Another question is, can this picture be art? Can the silhouette of your hand or the silhouette drawn with a pen, with a marker, be art? Can this drawing, which is a drawing of maybe a 10 years old or 8 years old kid with very basic traces, can this be art? And who decided if this is art or if it's not art? And what you have here in this picture is a drawing from a victim who's telling us how his life was before the war and during the war. It's written in French because this is in Mali, it's the language that they speak. And you have a building of the public administration, the school, a student, and then you have a clear division on the middle of the paper. And in the other side, you have the same setting, the same place, but now is a perpetrator, a man with weapon as they define it, a little kid being kidnapped, and of course, the weapons. Is this art or artistic? I don't know. You're the artist. You tell me. In this new picture, we have actually one of the persons who draw the same kind of drawing, and after and before. And you can see how in the first part, they have like the little village. In the second part, they have using red colors, using war expressions, he and his family being displaced and becoming refugees, trying to cross the border. Can that be art? What about this picture? What about these two drawings? These two drawings are of police, maybe army, who are holding a gun against civilians. You can see clearly one of them is a woman, the other one, I'm not sure. One is Muslim, and there is a very bad context of war going on. It's a sad picture, but can that be art? And why not? And the answer when we speak about it is that the art is not in the drawing. These drawings may not even be artistic. They may not be considered as anything, but the art is in the healing process. In the healing process that takes place when you're drawing this, and in the context where you draw them, and in the questions that are being asked while you draw this. And with the person that you're drawing with this with, and this is not a homework that you do alone in your house. This is a workshop. And this is a workshop that aims to help recreate, repair the social tissue of countries that have been affected. And this is what I did with Justice Rapid Response in Mali, and this is what I've been doing almost my whole career. In this picture, you can see a woman drawing the map of Bamako, which is the capital city of Mali, in which they are drawing the scars of the war, not in the bodies, but in the city. The scars of war, where the bombs fell, the attacks in the hotels, where they were kidnapped, the places that they were taken to be raped, and so forth. And transitional justice in this kind of workshops, this kind of methodologies, allows to give answers to very bad and heavy questions and very disgusting questions like, why was I raped? Why was my dad killed? What is his body? Who ordered this? Why am I a refugee? Because I want to know why this happened to me. And if I don't, there will be another scar, another wound. And truth heals. Not the art of drawing. It heals as well. Of course, drawing is powerful, but actually telling your truth in front of everybody. And the way that we do it, and that I did it with Justice Rapid Response, is asking this question. Can you show me your scars? Can you please stand up in front of all of us? And this all of us is a group of victims, perpetrators, children, members of the government, members of the Truth Commission. And the way that we start this is with the first agreement, is that everything that happens stays there, Shotman rules. And why? It's not because it is important per se, it's because it's the first way that you rebuild trust. We made an agreement. We made a first agreement, and this is our first peace agreement in this technique. The technique, lay down, somebody will draw your silhouette of your body, full size. Then I will ask you to draw your scars, your physical scars. I cut myself here, I cut myself here. Everybody has a scar under the chin, right? Most people have a scar because of a bicycle ride. So that would be the first layer. The second layer is, can you please tell me and draw the scars that were caused by your family? So we shift from physical scars to non-physical scars. Where does it hurt to be a member of your family? Did your dad beat you up? Was your dad abusive? Was your mom abusive? Were they using drugs? Or did you just live in a perfect, beautiful home? Then tell us about the scars caused by life. In a couple of years, we're going to have COVID as part of one of these scars, right? Economic problems, religious problems, things about your society. And the last one, which is the hardest one, tell us about the scars caused by the armed conflict. And here you will have victimhood. The worst of the worst that can happen to humanity, you will have it there. This is me. And with Justice Rapid Response, we went to Mali. And we invited people from the Truth Commission and other victims, former perpetrators, sitting together in one classroom, drawing who they are, who they think they are. And this is what we asked them. Tell us where it hurts. You do it the way that you want it because you are the artist. I cannot tell you how to draw a scar. Who am I? You do it. Tell us what you're feeling, but don't say it out loud. First, tell it to a paper. And paper is a safe haven. It's a safe space to tell things. You can draw whatever you want and you can hide the meaning to yourself. But for the first time, most people are telling what happened to them to something exterior, at the exterior, outside them. And that would be a piece of paper. And yes, we will have fun. But as it gets complicated, the fun, the drawing becomes a process, a healing process. And here you will have an example of what people are drawing. You have the silhouette of a person that has a hurricane in the head, that has a question marks all over his face, that has another kind of hurricane in his heart or her heart, with a beating heart with different rhythms. And then you have some skew drawings in the uterus. And I remember for this drawing what happened. Obviously, father, divorce, lost business, rape, forced abortion, and a broken arm when this person was a little kid. All those scars are there. Once the people draw their scars, we ask them to share those scars with us. And it's super difficult for somebody to stand up and say, I was raped. This happened to me, that happened to me. But these workshops are designed in such a way that people do it. And they're sharing what happened to them to other people. And the most important thing here is that they will say, that happened to me as well. You're not alone. I was also raped, men and women. I lived that day in a different way than you did. Let me explain how it happened to us. And when individuals recognize, understand, acknowledge that this happened to all of us, they're no longer alone. And they feel that they've been having this feeling of loneliness, which Mahid was telling us about. And I upload his video because I can connect it with it here. Is that they're not alone, that they have people around them, a society around them that has had the same exact feelings. So in these other pictures, you can see participants explaining what happened to them, related to physical up to the 6th level, which is war-related scars. So now, again, what is the healing? What is the art? The art is in the healing that takes place during and after this process. It's not in the drawings. The drawings are simplistic, are childish. Most of us do not know how to draw. We use computers for that. But when a person stands there in front of a community, even a small community, and they share their experience, you're planting the first seed of trust. The first seed of trust will grow up, will hatch, I'm not sure about the word, into the first step of reconciliation.
Hernando, thank you so much for that. I'm just, I don't want to rush you, but I'm very conscious that we're kind of running slightly over time. So we might have to reduce the number of questions we can take at the end, but that is...
No, I was almost finished.
Oh, brilliant. So I mean, I absolutely love this. When I was desk officer for accountability for war crimes, and I saw this because I've been working with Justice Rapid Response, and I just thought it was amazing that you use drawing as a part of the kind of healing process, and that to me was fantastic, because I always found that, I mean, when I'm at work, I don't tend to tell anyone that I'm an artist, because it just doesn't kind of inspire loads of confidence in my colleagues, particularly my legal colleagues. But actually, I just loved it because of the fact that you use drawing, and it's a powerful tool. And I think you kind of clearly state that it's, actually the kind of the process and the giving the survivors control over what they put down is so important, and the collective kind of sharing of trauma is also important to healing. I just wanted to kind of reflect on one of the questions that you posed at the beginning of your slideshow, and actually bring Errol in. So I think one of the questions was, can art exist in war? And I think that kind of, it is a really interesting question, because I know only a few years ago that the destruction of cultural property is now a war crime. And I want to bring in Errol here, because he's been he's done a project on looking at the kind of collections acquired by quite a lot of established museums, such as the British Museum and the Pitt Rivers Museum in Oxford, which is really interesting for me because I'm from Oxford, and actually a lot of these kind of collections were acquired during wartime. And so, I mean, first of all, Hernando, what's your take on the kind of the cultural importance, and when, I mean, if it's destroyed during wartime, how does that affect people that you interact with? And then maybe I'll go to Errol to kind of ask his views on that.
So in most of the places that had been affected by war, art and culture do not become a priority. The enjoyment of these beautiful, majestic places like in Mali, you have in the north in Timbuktu, cultural property that was destroyed. People do not have the time to admire it. In Cambodia, they had these huge, enormous temples that were also mined and were destroyed by Khmer Rouge, and so forth. So one of the most important victims in conflict is this cultural heritage that is being destroyed, and that's what we are as humanity. That's our footprint as artists in this planet. This is what we leave behind generation to generation. Is being affected. It's severely being damaged, and I'm so happy that other institutions such as the International Criminal Court are making a huge effort to make accountability for these kind of crimes. So art is also a victim of armed conflicts and war. I don't know if that answers the question.
Thank you, Hernando. Errol, can I ask you for your thoughts on this? I think with your work, it was, you know, exposing the kind of acquisition of artifacts through war, and you know, I guess, you know, obviously the British Empire was involved in many wars, and I wonder what you think about kind of art and war, and perhaps looking to the future, what should be done now to kind of right the wrongs of the past.
Yeah, in fact, I wanted to just clarify some terms, because the question that one of the questions that Hernandez posed about can art exist in war, I think is a different question from cultural property and heritage destroyed or seized during armed conflict, right? Because in relation to Hernandez's first question, actually there are some great examples of art existing during war or responding to war. The one that I was thinking of actually while Hernando was speaking was of Guernica. You know, that was during the Spanish Civil War. It continues to have resonance, and during the Iraq, I don't know if you remember this, there's a replica of it in the United Nations, and the then Secretary of State Colin Powell covered it up during the press conference about the attack on Iraq, because it was still considered to be sensitive. Now, but the question of cultural property, what we've been dealing with here in the UK over the summer has been to do with cultural heritage seized by the British during the colonial period, and seized, in the case of one particular set of objects, the Benin bronzes, seized through the perpetration of really, one could call it genocidal violence, actually, against the Kingdom of Benin. Not only did they destroy the city, completely destroy the city and all of its buildings and so on, many people lost their lives, and then the artifacts were seized and then distributed amongst different museums. The trouble is we don't yet have a legal framework around this situation, and that's what was brought to light by the Black Lives Matter campaign this summer, because some of these same museums were expressing horror at the killing of George Floyd, but not dealing with the fact that they have objects in their collection that were acquired at worst through the perpetration of violence, at best through illegal means or without the consent of their owners. So it's an ongoing situation. We still, unlike the Nazi spoliation, you know, artwork seized by the Nazis, we don't yet have a legal framework for the return of colonial heritage.
Thanks, Errol, for that clarification. Yeah, I appreciate they're two kind of separate things. I feel like there's so much here to discuss, and I'm very conscious that we're running out of time. But I just had a couple of points just to make, and I just wanted to quickly kind of hear your views. I get the sense that like giving back control is a really important thing. I think all of the panelists have kind of displayed that. So Hernando, you've kind of given back control to the survivors to kind of describe what happened to them. Errol, you gave back control to the former patients of the All Saints Hospital to actually kind of depict the place that they were incarcerated in the way that, you know, they had control over. And Majid, you kind of, through your work, you kind of, you have control over how you tell your story through your animations. I think, you know, bringing myself in, there's a bit of control over, like when I paint, like what I reveal and what I hide as well. But I do think there is a role for spontaneity and kind of a bit of freedom and a bit of fun, perhaps, particularly in COVID, where we've got loads of restrictions on us, particularly with lockdown. Does anyone have any thoughts about that kind of control versus spontaneity or fun?
I mean, if I may jump in, I mean, I detect behind the question, one is referring to artistic control. And I just wanted to say that when, like with that project that I was doing, art was not on my mind. I think it only came to mind when the work was being printed and prepared for exhibition. And I'm thinking about how does it look and how should we hang it? But the process for me was something like I felt that we were making a documentary. It was a document, a historical document, and that I was facilitating that. And I was using my artistic skill to facilitating that. But I didn't feel that I was making art, really. So the control, it was very easy to give well, I don't even know if I had a sense of even giving up control. It just seemed natural process that if you're making a documentary, the people whose experience it is must have the primary say and the voice, you know.
Thank you. Majid, do you want to say a few words at all? Or Hernando?
Yeah, art is what keeps this world moving on. Art is what is missing in these conflicts. The lack of artistic expressions combined with, if we had more artistic space, I believe politics could become something different. And instead of channeling polarization, instead of channeling hate, something could be done with art as a counterbalance for politics. I don't think my words came out right, but I think my message is that art could be the perfect vaccination for hate, for polarization. I believe that art is what is missing in this kind of context, what I've been working on.
I mean, certainly for me, I find it a lot easier to kind of communicate through visual artistic means rather than words or kind of written language. So yeah, I think it's an important kind of channel for kind of for communication. Majid, do you have any thoughts?
Sorry, could you please just briefly say again your question?
I was talking about control and the importance of control and actually experience as well, kind of, and I wondered whether you had any thoughts on, you know, how when you make your animations, you're controlling, you know, what is seen and what isn't. So, for example, you do when you animate the the refugee's journey. It's very much, you know, it kind of coming from you and your memories.
Sorry, my internet is not very stable. I couldn't get the question. I'm very sorry.
That's fine. Don't worry. I think maybe my final thought is I think experience is important too. Errol's already mentioned that it was important to give the cameras to the patients, because they're the ones who kind of lived in the hospital. And I think maybe, yeah, I mean, in my situation, I'm very conscious that I haven't experienced what my aunts have gone through during World War II. So I'm trying not to speak for them, but I'm kind of a voice piece, I guess. Maybe my final thought is on kind of, you know, is there a role for art to kind of highlight experience?
Experiences in,
I guess, you know, atrocities, war crimes, trauma.
it is. In my experience, art has helped. And art is not only drawings, art is a preservation of what happened to people, and the people in plural. Songs, poems, all kind of expressions, just women sitting and nodding together, that will create a space, a sufficient space that will become a safe space. So and I highlight again, is the process of the artistic. The artistic process is what actually counts, not the outcome. The outcome can be beautiful and will always be beautiful. And it should be and shall be appreciated by a lot, but it's the process of the art. What art is giving us is a tool, is a mean, is a path to preserve memories, to preserve the historical value of that, so we cannot repeat it, but also to heal individually and collectively as a society.
Yeah, I agree with you, Fernando. I really enjoy painting. It's, you know, I know that the subject matter I paint is quite dark, but I really enjoy the process, even if it, you know, the subject matter is not great. And Majid, do you enjoy making your animations?
Yeah, I enjoy. If I could, sorry, because of my English and my very awful English and my awful internet also, I couldn't follow exactly the conversation. But if I get how can the art can make the world better, I can make with the art better world, or more peaceful and more enjoyable world for ourselves and other people to the world. I think it's because we can't. This is the responsibility of the artists. They can better make can have an influence to make the better world, because arts makes a kind of point of the view, and between the humans or different humans, the artists, they can change the point of the view of the people to how to see the different things, how the people, they can have a better looking point of the view to the world, to the everything, to each other, to the humanity, or each of them. This is a responsibility of the art. The science and knowledge. The scientists, they can't do this. They can't improve the point of the view of the humans. How we should look into each other. How we can look into the humanity, everything.
Thank you, Majid. Lydia, can I just bring you in? I'm a huge apologies that I've completely run over time, and I only discovered that there was a Q&A thing. I was thinking that I was looking at the chat and thinking there weren't any questions, and I completely apologise. So, I mean, if people are happy to hang on for another 5 minutes, if that's okay, yeah, brilliant. And yeah, sorry, Lydia, I don't know whether you've had a chance to look at the questions, because I've just been quite absorbed in the panel, but if you could maybe read out the...
Yeah, sure. I won't do them in order just because of the way that the conversation's developed, but there's one for you, Jay, that in response to the question that you were just putting, and it's that someone's written, question to Jay, seems like you were asking the other panelists the question whether taking on somebody else's trauma and working with it is an act of appropriation or genuine process of truth seeking.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's a tricky one. I think it's something that I'm very conscious to kind of tread quite carefully with, because I don't want to, I think because I haven't experienced a trauma, I don't want to in some way kind of pretend I've experienced or kind of have an opinion on it. So I guess a sense of neutrality is really important. Yeah, appropriation or I guess truth seeking, I don't know. I mean, I think Hernando is more in the kind of realm of truth seeking. I guess my primary objective is to kind of make paintings rather than truth seek. But Hernando, do you want to come in?
Yes, just imagine when you have 50 people, 100 people, 10 people in a sitting, all telling you what happened to them during the atrocities or what happened during the armed conflict. So they will tell you, I was raped, my father was killed, I was displaced, I was displaced, I was displaced, I was raped, I was raped. All that information that is coming from the original source is what we transform in historical memory, is what we transform into truth-seeking books and notes and archives. So actually that is the raw material. And what we do is that we borrow our hands to write their truth. And once it is written, we give it back to them and they read it and they approve it or not. And they said, yes, I am reflected in this paragraph that you just wrote. And that paragraph comes from what happened. So we'll say what happened in this village, in this town, with these specific people, it is true. And we describe the facts as they told us. So this process of healing others' trauma, while healing them, becomes truth-seeking. If you do not heal them, if you don't participate in the healing process, and if people do not come out of these workshops better, is action with harm. And that's something that you don't want to do. You need to have clear principle that you cannot be an amateur to do this. You need to know a little bit of psychology, a little bit of different kind of knowledge, you know, in order to take somebody from that stage, leaving victimhood until a place where they are just feeling better, in which they can say, I'm not longer a victim. I was a victim. And when people say that in past tense, you know that their healing process started.
Thank you, Hernando. I think that's really important, the notion of like being heard and writing histories. And I guess part of my exhibition, the fact I call my show the Vanishing Act, is actually to highlight that, you know, some histories are remembered more than others. And you know, mostly when we think about World War II, we think about the fallen soldiers, not the raped and murdered civilians. So I think that, you know, what you do, Hernando, is really important to kind of, you know, have that document and the record that contributes to healing. Lydia, are there any more questions?
There are a couple of questions. Hernando has very kindly been writing responses to them, but I don't know if it would be good to maybe put them out to the panel more widely. But I'm not sure that we're going to have time for all of them. Let me just quickly look through. Okay, so one of them is saying, we tend to use transitional justice only for post-conflict or post-dictatorship settings, but listening to the definition of transitional justice by Hernando and hearing Errol discuss issues that we find in peaceful contexts, I'm wondering if we should not be applying a transitional justice approach, including through art, to peaceful contexts like the UK or the US and around the world, to address deeply rooted structural problems such as racism, white privilege, or gender equalities. So I don't know if Errol or Majid or Jay, you have thoughts on that?
I mean, my response is, it makes me think that the way we define peace is quite strange in a way, that, you know, the things that we've seen, for example, in the United States this year really questions that. I think also the notion of military industrial complex, the idea that the big Western powers, or the powers of the world, you know, not just Western powers, perhaps the superpowers of the world, are always in a state of readiness for war, and that this state of readiness, as it were, affects the civilian population. I mean, you must, you know, let's think back, you know, in the summer, one of the things that happened with the Black Lives Matter campaign was that the National Guard were called out by the president, you know, and so I really think that this kind of stance that we have, you know, that the Western countries are in a state of peace and, you know, these other countries are in turmoil, is something to be questioned, especially, you know, for oppressed minorities at the sharp end of the criminal justice system and certain aspects of internal military control.
Thank you, Errol. And yeah, I think that's a really interesting idea, to use transitional justice during, in a wider context. I mean, I think you know, particularly during COVID, I think a lot of people could benefit from talking about their experiences. I'm sure, actually, I think that, Hernando, some of your techniques are used in a kind of art therapy setting, I think, but maybe Errol knows a bit more about that. So, but I think they're really valuable tools to, you know, victim-centric kind of approach is so important.
The good thing about these tools is that we borrow tools from different sciences, from different places, from different people, and you just give them a try in conflict settings and post-conflict settings, and then you realize that if they're able to be used in these dramatic, hard environments, then they can be used somehow in other places. And most of these tools they're world knowledge. They come from Mali, they come from South Africa, they come from Argentina and Chile. They were adapted in Colombia, and then we transferred to Mali again. So all this knowledge has been there. It has been there even before the conflicts themselves. Africa is a beautiful continent in which I'm currently living and learning a lot from them. And the power that they have in traditional mechanisms to heal. They call them gachacha in Rwanda, bashingantahe in Burundi, and there's just people sitting under a tree, healing community, healing themselves after something went wrong. And the beautiful part of it is that they find again the lost opportunity of friendship. They will heal friendship, which is very important to them. So this is knowledge that has been there for 3,000, 4,000 years, especially here in Africa, that other continents we have borrowed and we presented back to them. So this is good for, these kind of tools are good for most of the settings, and we should feel proud of it, because it's a patrimony of the humanity, actually. And this is what I'm doing here in Africa, learning from their experiences, the beautiful power of the world.
Thank you, Hernando. I think we're run out of time now. I thank you so much for staying on for an extra 15 minutes. I'm just going to say thank you so much to all the panel members. I personally, I could have listened to you for a lot longer, so maybe something for next time is to factor in a bit more time. So I feel like we've just touched the surface, but there are lots of really interesting ideas that I'm definitely going to take away and think about more. Lydia, do you want to say the final words, perhaps?
Yeah, just again, thank you everyone. Thank you, Jay, for organising this. Thank you, Errol, Hernando and Majid for giving your time today and sharing your work and your experiences. It's really inspiring and invaluable. So thank you. And yeah, thank you everyone for coming. We will be sharing this recording on our website in the coming weeks. And if you haven't seen Jay's exhibition, don't miss it before it ends tomorrow evening. You can see it online, or there are a few of Jay's paintings in the gallery window. So if you're local, pop by and have a look from outside. And yeah, just thank you again and hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to end now.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.